If you're getting older and eating enough feels harder than it used to, you're not imagining it. You're less hungry. You get full faster. And advice like, just eat more protein feels completely disconnected from how your body actually feels now. What's happening isn't a lack of discipline. It's a predictable physiological shift that almost no one explains. And it quietly puts muscle at risk if you don't adapt. Once you understand why this happens, the solution stops feeling impossible. One of the biggest changes is something called the anorexia of aging, which is a clinical term for the gradual loss of appetite that occurs as people get older. It's not dramatic, and it's not something most people notice happening in real time. Hunger signals become quieter. The drive to eat weakens. At the same time, fullness arrives sooner. Meals that once felt normal now feel heavy halfway through. This means people stop eating earlier, even when their nutritional needs haven't been met. The body isn't trying to cause harm, it's just responding differently than it used to. As we age, several things change at the same time, and they all push in the same direction. First, appetite signaling becomes less reliable. The hormones that normally drive hunger don't respond as strongly. The sensation of hunger becomes muted. People don't feel the same internal urgency to eat that they did when they were younger. Second, satiety kicks in sooner. Older adults often feel full after smaller meals, even if those meals don't contain much protein. That means it's easier to stop eating before nutritional needs are met. Third, digestion and tolerance change. Large meals can feel uncomfortable. Heavier foods can linger. People naturally start choosing lighter, easier to digest options, which often means fewer calories and less protein without realizing it. At the same time, something else is happening that makes this mismatch more costly. Muscle protein turnover becomes less efficient with age. Muscle doesn't respond to protein as readily as it once did. This phenomenon is often called anabolic resistance. It doesn't mean muscle can't be maintained or built. It means the signal needs to be stronger. So on one side, appetite and intake are drifting downward. On the other side, protein needs for muscle maintenance are drifting upward. That's the collision. This collision explains why muscle loss accelerates with age even in people who feel like nothing has changed. They're eating familiar foods, following familiar routines, and maintaining a stable body weight. From the outside, everything looks fine. But under the surface, protein intake is no longer keeping up with muscle's needs. Over time, the body adapts by maintaining less muscle because it's energetically cheaper. This is not a disease process. It's a predictable response to reduced intake paired with reduced sensitivity. And it explains why muscle loss accelerates with age, even in people who feel like they're eating normally. Most people interpret this decline as inevitable aging. In reality, it's often an intake mismatch that develops gradually and goes unnoticed. Another important piece is habit inertia. As people age, routines solidify. Meal patterns that worked in their 30s and 40s get carried forward, even though the underlying physiology has changed. A breakfast that once supported muscle may now be insufficient. A light lunch that used to be fine may no longer carry enough protein to stimulate muscle effectively. But because nothing feels dramatically wrong in the short term, the pattern persists. Weight may stay stable, energy may feel acceptable, daily life continues. Meanwhile, muscle is slowly being lost in the background. This is why focusing only on body weight is misleading. You can maintain the same body weight for years while losing muscle and gaining fat. The scale doesn't warn you when this is happening. Strength, recovery, and resilience do, but only if you're paying attention. Another reason this problem goes unnoticed is that weight often stays stable. Muscle loss can occur while fat mass increases slightly, keeping the scale unchanged. People assume that if their weight is steady, their nutrition must be adequate. Strength, however, tells a different story. Tasks that used to feel easy begin to feel effortful. Recovery takes longer. Balance feels less automatic. These are early warning signs that protein intake and muscle maintenance are no longer aligned, even if nothing looks wrong on paper. So what actually helps? The goal is not to force-feed large meals. That usually backfires. The goal is to increase protein density. Protein-dense meals provide more protein per calorie and per bite. They allow someone to meet protein needs without dramatically increasing meal size. This often means making protein more deliberate. Instead of meals where protein is incidental, meals need a clear protein anchor. This doesn't require extreme diets, it requires prioritization. For example, choosing higher protein versions of familiar foods, adding a protein-focused item to an otherwise light meal, using convenient options when appetite is low. Another helpful shift is timing. Earlier protein intake often works better than trying to catch up at dinner. Appetite is usually better earlier in the day, and spreading protein across meals reduces the need for very large portions later. This is especially important because long gaps without protein become more costly with age. The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness. Understanding that eating enough gets harder with age allows people to adapt proactively instead of reacting after strength and function decline. One subtle but important shift that helps many people is reframing meals away from volume and toward purpose. Instead of asking whether a meal feels big enough, the more useful question becomes whether it meaningfully contributes to muscle maintenance. Smaller meals can work very well if protein is prioritized. Larger meals are not automatically better if protein is diluted. This reframing helps people stop fighting appetite and start working with it, which is especially important as hunger cues change with age. In the next episode, we'll connect this directly to daily life and talk about why protein and strength are so closely tied to independence as we get older. This is Protein Truth.